Welcome back to Books with Brandywine. Today I wanted to talk about Around the World in 80 Days. It was a good book. It was one of those books I was iffy on. I didn't think it was a super fantastic book, but I also didn't hate it. It was written by Jules Verne. It is supposed to take place in 1893, I think, or 1863. Sorry, my son ripped the cover. There it is. Around the World in 80 Days was 1873. And so the favorite thing that I had about this book was getting to see the world in the 1800s, places that I'm familiar with from other books and seeing how it's changed. So I definitely loved that. The story covers Phileas Fogg, who is a rich Londoner who makes a deal with his friends at the club that he could get around the world in 80 days. And Jules Verne was inspired to write this book because he had read an article that a train system had just been finished or something that allowed people to travel all around the world. And he was like, I need to make a book about that. So he did. And now we have it. And the main narrator of the book is Jean Passepartout, I think is how it's pronounced. He's a French guy that's been doing a bunch of different odd jobs and exploring, and he's decided that he finally wants to settle down. And he decides that the best way to settle down is to become the servant of Mr. Phileas Fogg. And he chooses him because Phileas Fogg always has the exact same schedule, down to seconds. If you're even a minute late on his schedule, you're fired. And so the fact that he has such a consistent schedule, he never does anything out of the ordinary, Jean decides that this is the perfect guy to work for, to settle down and to start to lead a quiet life. Unfortunately, the day that he starts working for him is also the day that Phileas Fogg makes this deal with his friends. And so he immediately sets out on this adventure. Phileas Fogg, when he makes this bet with them, there is money involved, and he decides that he can do this because he has the train schedules for pretty much most of the world, it seems like, memorized in his head. There is no backstory ever given on Phileas Fogg, so we have no idea where he got his money. We have no idea how he came to be, who he is. We're just thrust right into the story right then. And as they're going around the world, things do happen to try and thwart them. There is a detective that is chasing him around the world because at the same time that Phileas Fogg left London, a bank was robbed, and this detective is convinced that Phileas Fogg robbed the bank and that he is trying to escape and travel the world. And he eventually decides that the fastest way, or the easiest way, to capture and arrest Phileas Fogg is to just let him complete his journey and get back to London and then arrest him once he's in London. Along the way, they do hit some issues. Trains not being completed, or Jean getting arrested, or just different things happen to them. They do meet a woman while they're in India named Alda, and she's described to be an incredibly intelligent, incredibly beautiful woman, supposed to be super, super interesting. Phileas Fogg listens to her talk for hours every day, but we aren't given anything else on her. Her character is never, expounded upon or anything, which I thought was really sad because she's so beautiful and so intelligent. I want to know more about her. But she's kind of just there and ends up being the love interest of Phileas Fogg, which you can tell immediately that she's in love with him. And, I just noticed I got this book on sale. Anyway, my thumb was covering it. I didn't even notice. I don't actually remember buying this book. I just remember realizing it was in my collection. The biggest thing that I had to say about this book, the biggest shock for me, was that there's no hot air balloons in this book. In fact, the only reference to hot air balloons is this tab right here. And it's one sentence. That sentence. Where he's like, still some means must be found across the Atlantic on a boat, unless by balloon, which would have been venturesome, though not feasible. And that's it. That's the only reference to hot air balloons anywhere in the book. And so, the first thing that people think of when they think of Around the World in 80 Days is hot air balloons. And I think that's because of the movies. Like, there's, I believe, 2 movies that are out that share the same title, except that they have 80 in numbers instead of written out. But they have absolutely nothing in common with the book, besides, like, the name, Phileas Fogg, and I think even Jean's name might be in the movie. But other than that, no, everything is completely different. I do want to go back and watch the movies. I believe I watched one of them when I was really little. I don't remember much about them, except that when I was researching the book and trying to figure out where this hot air balloon thing came from, and I saw the movies and I like read their synopsises and realized that they're absolutely nothing like the book. And so I would definitely recommend everybody read this book, especially if you're into classics or into Jules Verne's, because this is one of his classics. This is a book that we hear about a lot, but mostly just so that you can know that there are no hot air balloons in this book. That is one of my main motivations for reading classics, is because you grow up with the movies and I want to see how they're different. And this book is definitely a huge example of the book being completely different from the movie. So, I liked it. Like I said, it wasn't my all-time favorite book, but it definitely wasn't a book I hated. It was kind of like a mediocre book for me. But I am glad that I read it, because now I know. But yeah, so I will see you guys next time.